Once crossed, Eileen became a member of Zhongcheng. As soon as he opened his eyes, he found the fair and beautiful Midtown Goddess Gwen Stacy lying on the same bed with him, tightly hugging him. Before he could get excited, the camera in the room, which was glowing red, and the whispers of theft outside the door made Eileen feel a piercing chill in his heart. Keywords of the novel. I lift the mysterious resurrection on Marvel without a pop-up window. I lift the mysterious resurrection on Marvel. Download the complete text, and read the latest chapter on the mysterious resurrection on Marvel. Chapter 1. Introduction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Introduction. Late at night. The climate in Chinatown in December is cold. On the bustling streets of the daytime, it is exceptionally quiet at this moment. Chinatown in New York City is located in the southern end of Manhattan, covering an extremely wide area with over 40 streets. The majority of people living here are Chinese. At this time, it is located on the edge of Chinatown, in the middle of an old 3-story small building with red brick exterior walls. A figure is gazing through the gap in the curtains at the slightly chilly street. The style of most buildings in Chinatown is mixed between Chinese and Western styles, including buildings with flying eaves and corners, as well as adjacent square residential buildings. The streets here are not spacious, and the buildings on both sides of the street are covered with disorderly Chinese memorial archway, which seems extremely narrow. Woo! A yellow taxi, with a soft engine sound, passed downstairs from the window. The pale headlights, through the gaps in the curtains, cast a narrow halo on the ceiling, and then gradually dimmed as the vehicle moved away. With the roar of the engine fading away, Eileen breathed a sigh of relief and lay back in bed. In the bedroom, the hazy moonlight shone through the gaps in the curtains, casting a cool beam of light that fell to the ground and became the only light source in the room. Eileen, lying in bed with her head in her arms, stared silently at the ceiling, as if in a daze or thinking about something. One day ago. Eileen is still busy with the private work of the wealthy father, sitting in front of the screen night and night rushing to work programming, but he is excited and his head is dizzy. When he woke up, everything changed. He inexplicably changed his body and appeared on the other side of the ocean, even younger. After a few minutes of shock, doubt, disbelief, and other emotions, Eileen began to accept reality. There's no way. If he doesn't accept reality anymore and thinks of a way, he may be forced to accept a life in prison. Because Eileen, who has just crossed over, is not alone by his side. At that time, there was a charming little beauty lying beside him. Don't misunderstand, that's not his girlfriend. Gwen Stacy. At that time, curled up on the same bed with him was Gwen Stacy, the top student in Nakamura. Even though her messy golden hair covered up a part of her face, her youthful and beautiful appearance, whether it was Eileen or her original body, would not be mistaken. Under the stimulation of acquaintances, a large amount of memories and information in his mind quickly fused with him. These are memories of another Eileen, named after him, in this world for over a decade. The information is not complete, and many are vague, but it is enough to give him a preliminary understanding of his own situation. It was precisely because of this that he realized clearly that Gwen Stacy, not to mention his girlfriend, was not even a familiar stranger between them. The only commonality between the two is probably that they are both members of the elite school, Zhongcheng School. However, Gwen Stacy is the shining beauty and top student in the school, always occupying the top spot in terms of age, while he is just an ordinary person with little athletic talent, good or bad academic performance, and apart from his handsome appearance, no one takes a second glance in the crowd. Of course, as a talented and beautiful academic powerhouse, Gwen Stacy is the crush of many male students in Midtown, and former Eileen is also one of them. Just. Under normal circumstances, there won't be any intersection between two people, let alone what happens. But more than 10 hours ago, the two of them lay together on the same bed in a small hotel. More importantly, both of them were drugged. What kind of strong aphrodisiac is enough to make two people burn with desire? If that's the only way, it's okay. Eileen is not unattainable, but when Eileen's gaze caught sight of the old-fashioned video recorder placed in the corner of the room emitting a faint red light, his body, burning with desire under the stimulation of drugs, quickly calmed down like pouring a bucket of cold water. Trap. Or rather, conspiracy. Under intense palpitations, Eileen managed to suppress the desire in his heart and forcefully freed himself from the entanglement of Gwen, who was already unconscious. He lay his ears on the door of the room and indeed heard 3 people boasting and farting not far from the door. "Henry, why do you think the boss insisted that we tie someone up to take care of that little girl? It's a pity that the water-spirited girl is cheaper than outsiders. If I were to enjoy it, even if I die, it would be worth it." "Fool, if you don't want to spend the rest of your life picking up soap in prison, just keep an eye on your lower body." That woman's old man, but the director of the New York Police Department. If it weren't for the big shot behind the boss speaking up, even the boss wouldn't want to provoke him. "That's right, Bud, don't cause trouble, otherwise the boss will get angry and we won't be able to save you." Got it. I was just talking. Do you need to be so serious?" "Humph, it's good to know. That kid inside has a 3-story building in Chinatown, and the boss has been wanting to expand his business into Chinatown. Take control of this kid, maybe it's also an opportunity for us." "I see, I said such a good thing. How could it be cheaper for this kid?" The chat among the 3 people outside the door made Eileen's heart cool, but it also confirmed his speculation. Putting on his clothes, he tiptoed to the window of the room and calculated the floor height of the room through the gaps in the curtains. Ellington breathed a sigh of relief. The room he is in is about the 2nd floor, and outside the window is an uninhabited alley filled with garbage. "If you jump from here, at least you don't have to worry about falling to death." Just as Eileen opened the window and wanted to jump out and escape, his gaze caught a glimpse of Gwen Stacy's sweet face. "I jumped out of the window and left." What should Gwen do? Once the group of people outside the door find themselves running away, no one can guarantee what they will do to Gwen next. With a slight grit of her teeth, Eileen carefully inserted a bolt into the door and then moved a cabinet to block it behind the door. With these 2 insurances, even if someone outside discovers something is wrong in the room and wants to enter, it will take some time. After finishing all of this, Eileen flipped out of the room window without hesitation. "Then I found a public telephone booth nearby and called the New York Police Department to report the incident. As for Gwen, who was unconscious, we escaped from that room together." "Sorry. Eileen doesn't have that ability. If the group of people who accidentally knocked them unconscious discovers it, it's impossible for both of them to explain it together." Fortunately, Gwen Stacy's father was the police chief of the New York branch, and her kidnapping quickly caught the attention of the New York Police Department. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Crisis. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Crisis. Not long after Eileen reported to the police cars roaring by surrounded the hotel where Eileen woke up. After a brief yet intense exchange of fire, 2 bodies were carried out of the hotel, and Gwen Stacy was quickly rescued and taken to the hospital. Gwen Stacy was rescued, but Eileen, who was hiding on the side, felt a chill in her heart. 2. The police only carried out 2 bodies and did not escort a 3rd person. He had heard 3 people outside the door before. 3 people, but only 2 were lifted out in the end, indicating that one of them ran away during the police's encirclement. Eileen doesn't know who the person who escaped is. But he knew he was in big trouble. Regardless of whether those few people entered the room before the police arrived. From the fact that the police only rescued Gwen Stacy from the room this time, the group only needed a little investigation to understand that they had already fled before the police attacked the hotel. When it comes to the precise raid by the police, as long as those people are not foolish enough, it is highly likely that they will take the blame on themselves. You will be in danger by then. In this way, there are only 2 paths to take in front of oneself. One is to go to the New York Police Department and seek protection as a victim. For the sake of saving Gwen Stacy on the phone, Eileen believed that her father George Stacy wouldn't mind giving her some help. Is that really safe? Previously, when those guys who tied themselves were chatting, I heard that it was because one of George Stacy's enemies was unhappy with him that Gwen Stacy was tied up. Can he really protect himself? And with such precise tracking of George's daughter's whereabouts, Eileen has reason to suspect that the big shots mentioned by those guys are just members of the New York Police Department. If that's the case, then if you go to the police station to seek help yourself, it's really falling into a trap. No, I cannot entrust my own life's safety to others' control. Just crossing this world, Eileen, who was full of vigilance towards everything and lacked a sense of security, almost subconsciously denied this path. Relying one's life on the kindness of others is not what Eileen wants. In that case. So he can only find a way to solve this trouble on his own. But before that, I have to go home first. Think of it here. Eileen turned her head and walked towards Chinatown, where she had lived for over a decade. Taking out the key and unlocking the door, I walked into the old-fashioned three-story apartment left for me by my mother. As soon as the door opened, I saw Pepper Potts sitting on the sofa in the living room, covered in a blanket, frowning. Upon hearing the sound of the door opening, Pepper Potts turned around and happened to see Eileen standing at the door. At the moment she saw Eileen, Pepper Potts's furrowed brow immediately loosened by 7 points, but quickly tightened by 3 points. Pepper took off the blanket from her body and stood up to look at Eileen, saying, "It's not a good habit to stay up at night. Can you tell Aunt Pepper where you went last night?" Seeing Pepper Potts, Eileen was also taken aback. And it seems that Pepper Potts waited here all night. But soon, the memory fragments that flashed through his mind reminded him of who the person in front of him was. Pepper Potts. Tony Stark's personal assistant to the chairman of Stark Industries. He used to be a partner of Kelly Lynn, Eileen's mother, and also Eileen's best friend. During Kelly's lifetime, she had invited Pepper Potts to stay overnight in this small building multiple times, and even provided a key specifically for Pepper Potts. During the time when Kelly passed away in a car accident, Eileen felt as if she had lost her soul and was confused. At that time, Kelly's funeral and subsequent inheritance were all handled with the help of Pepper Potts. If it weren't for Pepper Potts, Kelly's inheritance would have been divided up by that group of vampires long ago. With the virtues of those vampires, it would be a great mercy to leave this three-story building to Eileen. Not to mention any legacy. Moreover, as an orphan, Eileen's ability to attend top universities in New York, such as Midtown High School, is also related to Pepper's strong support. Recalling Pepper's relationship with his predecessor, Eileen's eyes lit up, as if there was another way. Without any concealment, Eileen recounted everything that happened today to Pepper Potts in detail. What? After listening to Eileen's description, Pepper Potts's face changed. She originally thought Eileen was in adolescence, going to a bar ghost with that fox friend or dating that girl and spending the night outside. That kind of thing. Pepper won't say much, he'll just remind Eileen to be safe and not to cause harm to anyone. After all, she was also young before. But who knew that Eileen's experience last night was much more exciting than she had imagined? Kidnapping. Gangs. Police. Dead people. These elements are gathered together and can all be used to shoot a youth idol drama. After quickly realizing the potential danger, Pepper Potts pulled Eileen seriously and said, "Leave this matter to me, I'll solve it. Don't go home for the next few days, come stay with me for a few days." Eileen shook her head at the words and said, "Aunt Pepper, I am very grateful for your help. As for me, I won't go back with you." The neighborhood where Pepper Potts lives is a predominantly white middle-class community, and although the security is much better than Chinatown, it is still relatively good. If Eileen stays with the past, there won't be much guarantee of safety, and it may even involve Pepper Potts. This is not what Eileen wants. Upon hearing this, Pepper Potts thought that Eileen didn't want to leave his home, so he placed his hands on Eileen's shoulders and analyzed the pros and cons with a serious tone, saying, "If it were really like what you said, those kidnappers would have been targeting you long ago. It's not safe for you to stay here alone until the matter is resolved, Eileen. Believe me, then you just need to stay at Aunt Pepper's house for a few days like you did when you were a child, and when things are resolved, Aunt will send you back." Before Pepper Potts could finish speaking, Eileen spoke again. "I know, Aunt Pepper. I don't want to trouble you. I'll find a place to hide myself in the next few days. Chinatown is big and very exclusive. It's not easy for those outsiders to find me here. Don't worry, Aunt Pepper. I'll protect myself. Moreover, the New York Police Department is not a vegetarian either. That group of people tied up the police chief's daughter, and now they may not even be able to protect themselves, but they may not necessarily think of me." After speaking, Eileen gave Pepper Potts a gentle smile and said, "Of course, the school still needs Aunt Pepper to help me make a phone call and take a leave." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Mutations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Mutations. Persuading Pepper Potts is not easy. However, Eileen ultimately managed to do it. Of course, during the period when this trouble is not completely resolved, Eileen must ensure a phone call in the morning and evening to report safety to Pepper Potts. This is not difficult for Eileen. However, before that, he needs to go to the nearby mall to buy a mobile phone. As for Eileen's original phone, it disappeared long ago when he was knocked unconscious and bound away. I don't know if it was embezzled by that group of guys, or if they accidentally threw it into a trash can. After personally escorting Pepper onto the car, Eileen turned around and went home, then locked the security door downstairs. Although Chinatown is not as chaotic as Hell's Kitchen, the security at night is not very good. Previously, Eileen passed by a small alley and was beaten, which is a clear example. Not to mention now, he still has a potential enemy. After seeing off Pepper Potts, Eileen didn't rest and quickly returned to the room, picking up a few sets of daily laundry. Eileen moved the bed in her bedroom and lifted the carpet. Then he took out the tools he had already prepared and dug out a slightly loose floor tile. Under the floor tiles, what was put away was the savings of my original mother and my grandparents for a lifetime. A bank card and 3 rolls of large American knives. Eileen's mother was a strong Chinese woman who died in a car accident a year ago. With the help of Pepper Potts, Eileen's mother left behind several $100,000 in after-tax inheritance, as well as a 3-story building located on the edge of Chinatown, which ensured Eileen's survival and economic foundation for successfully completing her studies. As for the father, well, it's almost non-existent. According to Eileen's mother, she went to the hospital's sperm bank to extract sperm, undergo artificial insemination, and then gave birth to Eileen's single mother alone in order to avoid being urged to get married by her parents. For this reason, Eileen's grandfather and grandmother were said to have been very angry at the time and almost broke up with their daughter. It was only after Eileen's birth that the relationship between the two sides gradually eased. In his childhood, Eileen usually lived with his grandparents, while his mother was responsible for earning money to support the family. When Eileen was 10 years old, a disease took away Eileen's grandfather's life, and his grandmother, due to excessive sadness and depression, soon followed him. By the way, this 3-story building in Chinatown was actually originally a legacy left by my grandparents. After 2 transfers, when it reached Eileen's hands, a significant inheritance tax was actually paid, causing Eileen's mother's wallet to shrink significantly. However, even if it shrinks further, Eileen's wealth will still exceed that of most people in this country. In addition to the $300,000 reserve funds stored in the bank, Eileen also has $30,000 left at home, as well as some small change as a backup. In addition, the first floor of their house can be used as a 3-story small building for commercial purposes. Perhaps this substantial wealth is also the reason why that gang is targeting Eileen. Pifu is innocent and harbors a guilty conscience. After taking out 3 rolls of large dollar knives and bank cards rolled together from under the floor tiles, Eileen stuffed these 3 rolls of dollars and bank cards into a backpack containing clothes, and then he reset the floor and bed. After finishing all of this, Eileen closed her eyes and pondered for a while, then took out a key from her bedroom drawer. After taking out the key, Eileen ran down the stairs step by step and then used the key in his hand to unlock the basement door of this somewhat old 3-story building. Perhaps it is due to some old disrepair and aging of parts. After opening the lock, Eileen kicked the wooden door of the basement several times before kicking it open. The power was so great that it even shook down the Protestant Bible calendar hanging on the wall. After waving his hand, he dispersed the dust that had fallen from the shaking and the turbid air that had gushed out of the basement. Eileen pressed some buttons on the nearby wall. Next second, when the lights lit up, the pitch-black basement suddenly lit up like daylight. The dazzling incandescent light, even the bright Eileen, was a bit dazzling. Because my grandmother was afraid of the dark, when my grandfather was still alive, he put a lot of effort into renovating this basement by lighting it up. Now it seems that the effect is quite good. Wait for the air in the basement to circulate with the outside, making it less turbid. Eileen stepped on the creaking wooden stairs and descended to the basement. Then, at the entrance of the basement, in the dark layer under the second drawer of the first row, a handgun wrapped in oilcloth was found. A well-maintained Beretta pistol with a silver luster. This is a treasure left by my grandfather. This Beretta 92F pistol once protected the Lin family for 3 generations and repelled many burglars and robbers. Eileen grew up listening to the story of this gun when he was a child. After her grandfather's death, Kelly received the gun in the basement to prevent Eileen from moving around. But every time my grandparents die, Kelly takes out this gun and takes good care of it. Touch the Beretta that has not yet been wiped off the gun oil. Eileen felt an indescribable excitement in her heart. Speaking of which, is this still Eileen's first time touching a gun? Moreover, the gun is a hero's courage, and touching it greatly enhanced Eileen's sense of security. After receiving the beautiful knife and gun, Eileen did not stay at home for too long, but quickly opened a room at a Chinese-American hotel several blocks away from home. Looking back on the day after her journey, Eileen felt a bit sad. This experience is much more exciting than my previous life. Turning over, Eileen kept sorting through the memories of her predecessor in her heart. Although many places are somewhat blurred due to human forgetting mechanisms, but there is still a lot of useful information that can be obtained from it. Eileen's consciousness kept organizing, as if watching a movie. With the continuous consumption of his mind, his body also began to experience inexplicable extra fatigue. This kind of fatigue became increasingly heavy, causing his consciousness to gradually become blurred, his thinking to fall into chaos, and he entered a state of almost falling asleep. At this moment, Eileen suddenly felt that the air around him seemed to stop flowing, becoming sticky and eerie. Next up. By Eileen's ear, in a daze, waves of crazy, eerie, and enticing whispers rang out. It seems like dozens of people are whispering something around Eileen. But no matter how much Eileen focuses on distinguishing and listening, he can't hear what these whispers are saying. On the contrary, the brain that was stimulated by these whispers was in pain. Just as Eileen was in pain and wanted to moan, this eerie murmur, accompanied by countless noisy murmurs, suddenly receded like a tide, and the surroundings became very quiet, creating a rather fluid atmosphere. Not just the surroundings. Eileen felt his soul also becoming erratic. His soul seems to have crossed a barrier and arrived at an unknown place. When Eileen opened his eyes again, a diffuse white mist filled his sight. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. The Balance of Destiny. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. The Balance of Destiny. Where is this? The eerie scene before him made Eileen's nerves tense. He carefully looked around and found himself floating on the edge of an endless silver river. And the white mist that obscured his vision was the water vapor that filled the silver river. The white mist flows like mercury. In front of him, a huge silver balance phantom stood quietly on the edge of the silver river, like an unchanging reef, constantly absorbing the diffuse white mist above the silver river. This is. Driven by curiosity, Eileen reached out his right hand, half curious and half exploratory, attempting to touch the imaginary balance floating in front of him. As soon as Eileen's fingers touched the imaginary shadow of the scale, a mysterious message suddenly came from the scale in front of him. Through the content contained in this message, Eileen roughly understood what the huge scale in front of him was. Destiny scale. The treasure nurtured in the river of fate. Due to unknown reasons, I was contaminated by someone and drifted into the world where Eileen was before. Guided by fate, it met Eileen in the dark and saved him at the moment of Eileen's sudden death, taking him into this world. Okay, I died suddenly before crossing over. So this thing brought me into this world, but it actually saved my life. However, when you say, time travel, why do you have to travel to this dangerous Marvel world? Can't you take me to a safer world? In the face of Aaron's roast, the silver balance in front of him did not respond. It's like a real dead object. However, Eileen, who has received some information from the destiny scale, does not believe that this is truly a dead object. The destiny scale is its external form, and its ability can actually manifest itself in the most easily understandable form according to the host's will. So for a programming dog, what is best understood? Of course it's the system. My mind twitched. The white mist in front of Eileen suddenly accelerated and converged to form a simple panel in front of him. Name. Ailin, Fate Compass. 100 fate points can rotate the fate compass once. Manifestation of fate, can manifest anything that has existed in the river of fate. Unlocked, talent. Destiny is impermanent, fate is unpredictable and ever-changing. As the host of the balance of fate, no one can capture your fate and predict your future. Skills. Driving, beginner, English, 11th grade, history, 11th grade, mathematics, 11th grade, chemistry, 11th grade, antique appreciation, beginner, programming, advanced. Strength evaluation. Vegetable chicken, fate point. 100, gift of fate, okay. As a middle city university that pursues quality education, its educational level is still decent, and it is well known for producing elite students in bulk. Unlike those garbage public schools that pursue happy education, they are famous for producing garbage. Although he has experienced the impact of several family members passing away one after another, the various subjects he studied have still maintained the appropriate level. As for programming, advanced, it should be a precious legacy left by Eileen from his previous life. It is not surprising that his understanding of programming has reached the current era as a senior programmer, and as an advanced skill, it is not surprising that he has traveled through his previous world until 2023. After reading the skills, Eileen also saw the strength evaluation of that vegetable chicken. Okay. Eileen is not surprised by this evaluation of his strength, but it also deepens Eileen's sense of crisis, making him more eager to improve his own strength. Thinking of this, Eileen looked at the only available compass of fate in the panel. 100 destiny points can rotate the destiny compass once, and the price is unknown whether it is high or low. At least now, he still has one chance to rotate the destiny compass. Who knows if the 100 destiny points marked as the gift of fate are the newbie gift package left by the destiny scale. No hesitation. Eileen directly opened the fate compass interface and chose to rotate the fate compass. There was no fancy and gorgeous interface, only a huge and incomparable phantom of the fate compass flashed before Eileen's eyes. Eileen had not even seen what the fate compass looked like, and the rapidly rotating fate compass stopped rotating, and then the pointer stayed in a certain selection. Next second. The phantom of the compass of fate dissipates into dots of light. And in front of Eileen, a pale blue light appeared. Shipped. Looking at the pale blue light floating in front of her, Eileen's heart trembled. Then she plunged her hand deep into the light and grabbed the object wrapped in it into her own hand. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the fortune teller potion. What appeared in Eileen's hand was a tube of dark blue viscous liquid filled into a test tube. Opening the detailed introduction of the fortune teller's magic potion, Eileen immediately saw the detailed information of the magic potion in his hand. Divinator's magic potion. Born in a world contaminated by external gods, a unique sequence power system. Magic medicine level. Sequence 9, effect. After taking this magic potion, one will slightly improve various physical fitness and obtain the mysterious side qualification called a fortune teller. They can efficiently learn and master the divination ability of the mysterious side, as well as the ability to avoid divination danger to a certain extent. They can also complete a certain degree of spiritual communication rituals through various ritual magic. Note: in a world polluted by external gods, any power system born in it has certain crazy and distorted characteristics. After taking this potion, it will erode the user's rationality to a certain extent. Those with unstable minds should use it with caution. Without fully digesting the potion, the user may even have a certain risk of losing control and become a monster out of control. Looking at the fortune teller potion in her hand, Eileen's expression was somewhat complicated. The Mysterious Master of the Octopus Mother, Eileen had read it many times back then. At that time, he had even amazed himself and fantasized about what would happen if he acquired some of these abilities. But when this kind of thing happened to herself, Eileen couldn't accept it. The power system of the mysterious world is widely recognized as one of the extremely unfriendly power systems to travelers. The higher the sequence, the closer it is to madness. Even if one becomes a god, they cannot escape this madness and must maintain rationality through specific anchor points. This characteristic of being associated with madness is definitely not what Eileen wants. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Taking Magic Potions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Taking Magic Potions. All the fate points gifted by the Destiny Scale have been used for the lottery, and Eileen no longer has any remaining fate points to use for the second lottery. If Eileen gave up the fortune teller potion in his hand, he didn't know how long it would take for him to touch the extraordinary power system again. In this world dominated by ordinary people, obtaining extraordinary power is not so easy. And even if you get it, most of the extraordinary powers in Marvel World do not have a high upper limit compared to the sequential potion system. There is no certain strength. In this world full of crises, can I really live to that day? And even if one accumulates to 100 destiny points again, can they really extract what they are satisfied with? Thinking of the information that she had just received, the balance of destiny had been contaminated by someone. Eileen doubted that even if she turned the compass of destiny again, she would not obtain anything better than the fortune teller magic potion in her hand. The balance of fate has been polluted. Who knows if the things it extracts will be affected? And I don't have much time to dwell on myself anymore. Don't say anything else. Even now, there is still a lot of trouble outside waiting for me. Think of it here. Eileen's gaze towards the tube in his hand gradually became firm. At this moment, Eileen suddenly felt his body rapidly gaining weight, drifting around and disappearing. His eyes were first darkened, and then he regained his sight. In a daze, Eileen returned to his rented hotel. If it weren't for the dark blue potion in his hand, Eileen would have suspected that everything just now was just a dream. It doesn't seem too bad either. At least I'm not someone without golden fingers. After lowering her head and teasing herself, Eileen looked up and poured the fortune teller potion into her mouth. The cool and slippery feeling quickly filled Eileen's mouth, then slid through the esophagus and flowed into his stomach. Then the thick blue liquid seemed to grow thin and long tentacles, and the cold and stimulation instantly penetrated every cell of Eileen. Under the stimulation of the magic potion, Eileen involuntarily twitched. Then his gaze began to blur, and his soul seemed to have begun to ascend again. Everything around him quickly twisted and transformed, and then became abstract. Even Eileen's thinking began to become erratic, but fortunately his remaining rationality managed to maintain that hint of clarity. He barely opened his eyes and sensed the surrounding scenery. Surrounding him were strange and indescribable figures, constantly circling around him, as if trying to pull him down and make him one of them, forever falling into this world. No, we can't be held back by them. Suddenly, Eileen had a realization, and his consciousness sank rapidly, merging with his own body. Boom! In an instant, the abstract art style returned to normal, and the figures surrounding Eileen quickly dissipated. The scene in the room returned to normal, but Eileen clearly didn't recover so quickly from the potion's transformation. At this moment, a large amount of knowledge rushed into his mind, giving him an illusion of being overwhelmed, and a large number of ghosting appeared in his eyes. The heavy shadows kept whispering in Eileen's ear, but Eileen couldn't hear them clearly. He felt a sharp pain on his forehead, and his heart was quickly filled with an impulse to vent and destroy. Wrinkled his brow and shook his head continuously. After a long while, Eileen finally overcame that bad feeling. Ha! After spitting out a long mouthful of turbid air, Eileen found herself wet all over, as if soaking in water, and her whole body was soaked by her own sweat. What a terrible experience! After a bitter smile, Eileen didn't feel much uncomfortable in his heart, but rather a little more joy. Taking the fortune-teller potion, Eileen suffered not only pain, but also truly bestowed upon himself extraordinary power and some mysterious extraordinary knowledge. According to that knowledge, I should now learn to restrain my own strength through meditation, and then take control of it. The first step is to adjust your breathing. Eileen deepened the intensity of her breathing and slowed down the corresponding frequency. In each slow and rhythmic breath, Eileen gradually let her brain empty. At the same time, he outlined a sacred giant scale in his mind, allowing all attention and thoughts to hit it, thereby eliminating other chaotic thoughts. Meditation requires outlining objects that do not exist in this world and are imagined out of thin air. Only in this way can one gradually transcend the self and become one with the Kami in the universe, gaining insights and revelations about truth, and gaining knowledge that can only be understood by oneself. During a night of meditation and practice, Eileen, the fortune-teller of the magic potion, was able to restrain the power that the potion had dissipated and barely mastered the ability of spiritual vision. As for the various abilities related to divination, Eileen still needs some learning and practice to master. Now, he may not be able to effectively interpret even the simplest dream divination. However, none of this can suppress Eileen's excitement. Because from today on, he is also one of the extraordinary. After becoming an extraordinary person, Eileen's sense of crisis was slightly alleviated. At this moment, the door of the room where Eileen was located rang with a knocking sound. At the sound of the knocking on the door, Eileen's pupils shrank and his right hand instinctively reached into the pillow, gripping the beretta. Compared to the yet-to-form combat power of the diviner's potion, now the deterrence and assistance brought by firearms are still greater. This cheap Chinese hotel doesn't have much wake-up service, and the owner won't provide this kind of service kindly. Picking up the pistol, Eileen carefully flipped out of bed like a cat, then picked up his backpack and took a step towards the window. The location and rooms of this hotel were carefully selected by Eileen, and in case of any problems, he can quickly escape through the windows outside the room. But at this moment, the person knocking on the door outside seemed to hear the movement coming from the room and spoke out. "Lin, this is your Uncle Yuan. When he wakes up, he comes over and opens the door. Last night, we saw 3 black ghosts sneaking into Chinatown and prying open your door. It seemed like they wanted to sneak in and do something, but they were caught by our Loyalty and Righteousness Hall. The old criminal interrogated him for a while, and they said they were here to trouble you. You'd better come and take a look." Upon hearing the words coming from outside the door, Eileen, who was about to jump out of the window and escape, was slightly taken aback. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Zhongyi Hall. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 6. Zhongyi Hall. Upon hearing the words coming from outside the door, Eileen, who was about to jump out of the window and escape, was slightly taken aback. Uncle Yuan. Zhongyi Hall. In Eileen's memory, he actually knew a person he called Uncle Yuan, who was the nephew of Eileen's grandfather, a distant relative. When the other party illegally immigrated from mainland China to New York, it is said that it was Eileen's grandfather who helped to organize this and that. Only then did they barely solve the problem of settling down. Even during the initial period, the other party stayed at Eileen's grandfather's house until they found a job before moving out. With this level of friendship, the relationship between the two families is very good. When Eileen was young, Uncle Yuan would come to visit his grandfather with gifts during holidays and festivals. However, Eileen's mother didn't seem to like Uncle Yuan, who was a member of the gang, nor did she like Eileen having too much contact with each other. After the death of her grandparents, the relationship between the two families quickly faded. But even so, every spring festival, Uncle Yuan would still bring a bunch of gifts to his door. After recalling memories about Uncle Yuan, Eileen hesitated for a moment. After arriving at the door blocking the cabinet, through the cat's eye, one could see that in the empty hallway outside, there was only a burly man with a cut in the head and a scar on the corner of his eyes with a Chinese character face standing behind him. He tentatively spoke out, "Uncle Yuan." "Nonsense, who else can I be?" "You kid, can't you even hear my voice?" the person outside the door said angrily. After confirming through Lingsher that there was only Yuan Shu outside the door, and there was no malicious intent towards him, Eileen just moved the wardrobe that blocked the door. Upon hearing the commotion coming from the room, Uncle Yuan's face, standing at the door, flashed with a hint of strangeness. After a while, Eileen finally opened the door of the hotel and said brightly to Uncle Yuan, "How could that be?" Uncle Yuan did not pay attention to the insincerity in Eileen's words. Instead, he looked at the group of cabinets next to the door and nodded in satisfaction. "Hey, it's good. It's grown a bit more than before." After speaking, Uncle Yuan walked into Eileen's rented room without hesitation, then found a seat and asked Eileen, "How did you provoke those people from the Water Ghost gang? Their power is mainly in the dock. In theory, you shouldn't be able to provoke them." Eileen said helplessly, "It's not me who provoked them, but they provoked me." Upon hearing this, Uncle Yuan raised his eyebrows and said, "Tell me more." "They probably set their sights on the house left by my grandfather and the money left by my mother, so they knocked me unconscious and drugged me, intending to make me comply by filming that kind of video. However, I managed to escape and then I called the police. The police rushed into the area where they kidnapped me and rescued another girl who was kidnapped by them. It seems that they also shot and killed the two of them in battle. The three people you mentioned may have been the ones they came to retaliate against me. To be honest, not you, even the name, Water Ghost Gang, has been heard of for the first time." Although Eileen did not feel any malice from Uncle Yuan, he only selected a part of what he could say. As for the involvement of the New York Police Department director and a potential big shot behind this matter, Eileen didn't even mention it. Even Gwen's identity was described by Eileen as an innocent victim. After all, Uncle Yuan is not like Pepper Potts, a globally recognized good person, and strictly speaking, they haven't had any contact for a long time. For Eileen now, it's better to be careful. "Have you set your sights on the house left by Uncle Lin? Recently, the group of people from the Water Ghost Gang seems to be expanding their territory. Have those guys set their sights on Chinatown?" After listening to what Eileen said, Uncle Yuan didn't know what came to his mind. His eyebrows furrowed and he even pulled the scar at the corner of his eye, making him look even more ferocious. I pondered for a few seconds. Uncle Yuan stood up and said, "Later, you can come with me to see Uncle Chi. Then, you can talk to Uncle Chi about what you said to me, but let's focus on what they have set their sights on your house. Chinatown is our Chinese territory, and whether it's our Zhongyi Hall or any other entrance, we won't let outsiders reach into Chinatown. Upon hearing these words, Eileen's eyes lit up. Uncle Yuan's intention is very obvious. He wants to lure the Water Ghost Gang into targeting the Chinatown area by causing trouble for Eileen with those 3 people. Someone on their own territory has caused trouble for other gangs, but the Zhongyi Tang and other gangs may not necessarily pay attention to it. But if someone sets their sights on their territory, the people of Zhongyi Hall will definitely not sit idly by. As long as Zhongyi Tang takes action, no matter what the outcome is, Eileen will be much safer than now. With this in mind, Eileen solemnly said to Uncle Yuan, "I understand how to do it." Thank you to Uncle Yuan. Upon seeing this, Uncle Yuan's eyes flickered with a hint of joy, but on the surface, he casually swayed. "It's just a small matter. By the way, let's go. Uncle Chi is getting old, we can't let him wait too long." Okay. New York. Since immigrating to Zhongyi Tang, Chinese Americans have always faced unfair treatment, capital oppression, racial discrimination, and even bullying from some black people and gangs. During that time, the lives of Chinese Americans were extremely difficult. In this context, a Chinese gang called Hongmen emerged, connecting the poor and the wealthy, while cooperating and playing games with the government, responding to the oppression of the capitalist class, and even resorting to military resistance when necessary. At the peak of Hongmen, 9 out of 10 Chinese Americans were members of the organization. But with more people, there will be more thoughts. As soon as the peak period passed, Hongmen began to decline and split into multiple Chinese gangs of all sizes. Zhongyi Hall is one of them. To this day, although Zhongyi Tang is not the most powerful among Chinese gangs, it is the group with the deepest qualifications. Under the leadership of Uncle Yuan, Eileen arrived at the entrance of the Zhongyi Hall. After bypassing the hall and entering a room on the left, Eileen saw 3 black people tied together with hemp ropes. At this moment, their faces were slightly swollen and blood was still left at the corners of their mouths. It was obvious that they had been well received by the hospitable friends of the Zhongyi Hall. On either side of the room stood a row of young people with poor looks, while on the top of the mahogany chair sat an old man dressed in Tang Dynasty attire, meticulously grooming his silver hair. "Uncle Chi, I have brought you here." The old man sitting at the top put down the teacup in his hand, nodded at Uncle Yuan, and looked at Eileen, saying, "Tell me, how did you offend the Water Ghost Gang? It's not a small matter for them to send 3 people to break into our Zhongyi Hall's territory in the middle of the night and bring guns to the door." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Warning: you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Warning: this is not that I offended them. After shaking his head with a bitter smile, Eileen followed Uncle Yuan's guidance and explained the previous words in a light and evasive manner. Sure enough. Upon hearing this, Uncle Chi became furious. How brave! His emaciated palms, like hooked eagle claws, fell fiercely onto the table. With a click, a mahogany square table was smashed into pieces. The sudden loud noise startled Eileen, who stared at the emaciated 7th uncle in front of him. He couldn't believe that such a haggard old man could smash a mahogany square table with a single slap. Not just Eileen. The other people in the room were all startled by Chishu Gong at this moment, and they remained silent as if they were quails. In the end, Uncle Yuan spoke up. "Uncle Chi, calm down. The people outside have long been extremely envious of Chinatown. They have been staring at Chinatown for quite some time now. Why should Uncle Chi get angry and break his body? Humph. How can outsiders take over the foundation laid by our ancestors?" Uncle Chi snorted coldly, "I haven't died yet." After speaking, Uncle Chi's gaze became exceptionally sharp, like an eagle staring at the 3 black men bound in the middle of the room, as if he was about to execute Ling Chi with his gaze. "Yuanli, you handle these 3 people for me, and then go to the Water Ghost sect to send a warning. Tell them, Chinatown is our territory. Yes. After a nod, Yuan Li called out to a few people and lifted the three bloated guys who had covered their mouths. After Yuan Li takes people down, Uncle Chi's anger also calmed down a lot. He turned his head and glanced at Eileen, saying, "For Yuan Li's sake, our Zhongyi Hall can take this fruit for you, but this matter has arisen because of you, and you cannot help but express it." As a spokesperson, he had already seen through the ideas made by Yuan Li and Eileen. Just like Yuan Li said, Chinatown is a private land for Chinese gangs like Zhongyi Tang, and they absolutely do not allow anyone else to extend their hands in. Uncle Chi is also willing to give face to gang elders like Yuan Li. Of course, face can be given, but Eileen cannot be without expressing himself. As a gang, Zhongyi Tang has never engaged in unprofitable transactions. Upon hearing this, Eileen was not surprised. There is no free lunch in the sky, and Zhongyi Hall is not a good hall either. Upon hearing this, Eileen said sternly, "Please give me your guidance, Uncle Seven." "Very good, I like smart people like you." Uncle Seven seemed to appreciate Eileen's attitude and said with satisfaction, "I'll show you two paths. One way is to join our Zhongyi Hall. If you are one of our own people, then the hall will stand up for you and no one will gossip. Of course, if you don't want to mess around, you can also choose another path, which is to spend $100,000 to buy peace. $100,000 is enough for the young men of our Loyalty and Righteousness Hall to give you a head start." On the Water Ghost Gang side, after Yuan Li warned them today, "I think you can also be quiet for a while. Of course, as long as you stay in Chinatown, our Zhongyi Hall will also ensure your safety." After speaking, Uncle Seven closed his mouth and let Eileen choose for himself. And he himself picked up a cup of fragrant tea sent by his younger brother and slowly savored it. Zhongyi Tang, of course Eileen will not join. As far as Eileen knows, although the strength of Zhongyi Hall is not strong, the phenomenon of ranking based on seniority is very serious. Even if he really wanted to join the gang, Eileen wouldn't choose Zhongyi Hall. So Eileen said straightforwardly, "I'll choose the second option." "Do you choose the second option?" "I got it. I'll have $100,000 prepared within 3 days, and I'll have someone come over to pick it up." Apart from some regret, Uncle Seven was not surprised by Eileen's choice. However, this also made him lose interest in continuing the conversation with Eileen. After a brief explanation, he asked Eileen to step down. After leaving the Zhongyi Hall, Eileen's mood improved a lot. Although the hard work fee of $100,000 directly caused Eileen's wealth to shrink by more than half, it was inevitable that he felt a bit heartbroken, but he cared more about his own safety than his possessions. Not long after leaving Zhongyi Hall, Uncle Yuan, who had just exchanged contact information with Eileen, called Eileen. "Lin, why don't you go back and wait for my good news first? After I go over and warn them in the name of Zhongyi Hall, those bullies and cowards from the Water Ghost Gang won't dare to touch you anymore." "Don't worry, hee." Before he could finish speaking, a mournful cry and plea for mercy came from the other end of the phone. "A group of softies, shut up for me." After a verbal abuse over the phone, Uncle Yuan continued. "Alright, Uncle Yuan has something else to attend to, so let's not talk about it for now." Before Ailin could reply, Uncle Yuan hung up the phone. "This is really an unexpected joy." Eileen silently put her phone back in her pocket and whispered with a smile. Originally, after rejecting the plan to seek help from the police station, Eileen had already prepared for the start of hell, but unexpectedly, various unexpected developments emerged one after another on his own. Whether it was Pepper Potts before or the current involvement of Loyalty Hall, it was a good thing for Eileen. After leaving the Zhongyi Hall, Eileen didn't leave immediately, but instead found a nearby noodle shop and started eating breakfast with a wheezing sound, while also reporting safety to Pepper Potts. More than 10 minutes later, the door of the Zhongyi Hall has opened again. Seeing Yuan Li, with over 30 people, he hurriedly got into 5 vans and left. Eileen quickly called a taxi to follow him. At first, the taxi driver refused because he didn't want to take on orders that were immediately troublesome. But after Eileen pulled out $500 in cash, he immediately patted his chest and promised that the car would not be lost. After more than half an hour, at the entrance of a bar near the dock area, Eileen saw several vans from Zhongyi Hall stopping. Then more than 30 people rushed towards the bar called Morning Star, in a grand manner. Morning Star. Is this bar the home of the Water Ghost Gang? After taking note of the name and location of this bar, Eileen instructed the driver to take a detour back home. For a fortune teller, battles are never just positive. The first thing Eileen did when he returned to Chinatown. It's just a simple disguise and then switching to an anonymous hotel. Eileen still remembers the incident where he was directly approached by Zhongyi Hall in the morning. Although Zhongyi Hall is the local leader of Chinatown, this experience has made Eileen feel a bit of crisis. And since Zhongyi Hall can easily come to you, what about the group of people from the Water Ghost Gang? End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Something happened. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Something happened. The dock area in the evening is about to bid farewell to the hustle and bustle of the day. Even some shops have started to display closing signs. However, in some places, the lights are still bright and red. After work, the workers who have been busy at the dock for a whole day, some of them will go home in groups of 3 or 2. Some people, after a busy day, would invite 3 or 5 friends to a bar to relax. In this situation, many cheap bars have emerged along the dock area. The Morning Star Bar, controlled by the Water Ghost Gang, is one of them. Many people on the dock know that this is a bar controlled by the Water Ghost Gang, but as long as the prices of the drinks here are low enough, they can ignore everything else. And these bars controlled by gangs also have a benefit. That's because there are very few people causing trouble here. On weekdays, 2 strong men wearing gray-black jackets with bulging waists will stand openly at the entrance of the bar, intimidating those who dare to peek here. Hey, why isn't there anyone guarding the door today? A few regulars of the Morning Star Bar, upon arriving at the entrance, muttered a strange sentence and then pushed the door open on their own and walked in. When he pushed open the door of the bar, the scene inside the bar made their pupils involuntarily shrink slightly as they wanted to enter and have fun, and then they all trembled together. Amidst the melodious music, dozens of people in the bar seemed to fall into a deep sleep, lying in the hall like this, but there was no fluctuation in their chests. The colorful lights shone on the faces of these people, flickering between light and darkness, creating a sinister and terrifying feeling in their hearts. At the same time, an inexplicable pressure also appeared on them. The few people who entered the bar twisted their necks and shoulders in discomfort. Then, driven by the body's instincts, he instinctively took a few steps back. Then, they suddenly realized that their companions were also doing the same actions as him. What's going on? A few bar regulars trembled in their hearts. The next moment, a shallow murmur came to their ears. That is a syllable they have never heard before. I can't understand the meaning at all. There is only a tingling scalp and a feeling of irritability from the bottom of my heart. This kind of sound stimulates them to want to shout loudly and then kill everyone around them. In fact, they did exactly the same. A few minutes later, the Morning Star Bar has once again returned to tranquility, leaving only the never-ending melodious music echoing in the quiet bar. At this point, if you observe carefully, you will find that among the dozens of people in the bar, there are now 3 more figures. And the slightly open bar door, like the door of the abyss of hell, mercilessly devours all life that steps into this door. At first, no one knew what happened in the Morning Star Bar. It wasn't until someone called the police that it caught the attention of the New York Police Department. On the other hand, when dozens of people from Yuanli had not returned and the phone couldn't be reached no matter how hard they tried, the 7-uncle public horse sitting at the entrance of the hall, waiting for news, realized something was wrong. But when he sends someone again to inquire about the news at the Morning Star Tavern. The entire Morning Star Tavern, including its area of 50, has been surrounded by a large number of police officers and cordoned off. What's going on? The 5 Chinese youths sent by the Zhongyi Hall to inquire stared blankly at the hundreds of New York police officers not far away, as well as the large cordon area raised. The Morning Star Tavern of the Water Ghost Gang has been surrounded by the police. Did Yuan Gu and the others fight with the Water Ghost Gang before? Or did they make too much noise and provoke the police to arrest them all? It's possible that Yuan and his team brought 30 brave and hardworking Tang Ko brothers. With so many people, it's impossible for the Water Ghost Gang to eat them. It must have been those police officers who made dumplings for them. Yuan and his CIA didn't run out. Xiao Si and Xiao Wu, you go to the nearby area to inquire about the situation. I will call Uncle Chi and ask him to contact the police to inquire about the situation. If Brother Yuan and his team are really caught, they will need to find a lawyer and be released on bail. The matter with Morning Star Bar. No one notified Eileen immediately. It wasn't until the next day when the people from Zhongyi Hall called that Eileen found out that Uncle Yuan had an accident. When Eileen hurriedly arrived at Zhongyi Hall. But it was discovered that there were fewer personnel in the Zhongyi Hall, and the remaining ones were also a bit restless. Just as he turned here, Eileen's mood suddenly became inexplicably gloomy, with an indescribable sense of oppression, depression, and gloom. What's going on? After keenly realizing his own mistake, Eileen immediately stopped and looked around, but he didn't see anything strange. After thinking for a moment, Eileen lightly pressed his teeth and activated his spiritual vision. Suddenly, within sight, a change occurred immediately, and the aura of the disciples of the Loyalty and Righteousness Hall was directly displayed. Before Eileen could even examine their healthy colors, he was attracted by the rich and dim symbolism of emotions. The melancholic, sad, and oppressive dimness almost connected into a shadow. What's going on? With a heavy heart, Eileen met Uncle Seven again. However, compared to a day ago, the old man was visibly haggard, even his meticulously combed silver hair was slightly disheveled. After seeing Eileen, Uncle Chi lifted his eyelids and said in a deep voice, "What happened to Yuan Li and his team?" Eileen asked, "What's going on?" "There is a problem with the Morning Star Bar of the Water Ghost Gang. Not a single person who entered yesterday came out, and even the police station had several people inside. Now, the police station has closed down that area. I have asked someone to inquire about the news, and it is said that they have encountered something strange." Upon hearing this, Eileen's pupils contracted sharply. Strange things. What kind of ghost is this? Marvel World doesn't seem to be weird, does it? Seeing Eileen's reaction, Uncle Seven's face was filled with disappointment. The Water Ghost Gang started because of Eileen, and Uncle Seven thought Eileen would know more. Unexpectedly, he overthought it. After a moment of silence, Eileen asked, "Uncle Yuan, are they still alive?" Uncle Chi shook his head and said, "I don't know. According to the police, there seem to be hundreds of people trapped in the lobby of the Morning Star Bar, but no one knows whether they are alive or dead now. As for more specific details, you need to inquire by yourself because I don't know either. And now, the case at the Morning Star Bar is said to have been transferred to the FBI. I understand." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Strange Morning Star Bar. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Strange Morning Star Bar. After bidding farewell to Uncle Chi, Eileen reached out and waved a taxi, then drove towards the street where the Morning Star Tavern was located. When Eileen arrived near the Morning Star Tavern, it happened to be noon. The sky is clear and clear. The sun is shining brightly. After entering the street where the Morning Star Tavern is located, Eileen couldn't help but shiver coldly. Just as Eileen arrived near the Morning Star Bar, Coulson and Grant Ward, dressed in a straight suit and with high hairlines, also walked to the entrance of the bar. Is this the problematic bar? It doesn't seem like there's anything special, does it? After looking at the bar, Grant Ward said somewhat strangely. Don't be careless, Grant. The New York Police Department has already damaged the police inside. Speaking, Coulson took the special protective suit handed over by the staff and started wearing it on the spot. Grant Ward, who was standing beside him, also obediently put on protective clothing and armed himself to his teeth. After putting on their protective suits, the two of them followed behind a tactical team and leaned towards the tavern, one in front and the other behind. When the tactical team pushed open the door of the bar, the melodious music suddenly became loud. In the hall of the Morning Star Bar and the music, there are hundreds of people lying motionless, as if they have fallen into a deep sleep. Upon seeing this, Coulson made a gesture. The next second, the captain of the tactical team led a person into the bar. Seeing that nothing unusual happened in the bar, Coulson's eyes flashed with a hint of doubt. Grant Ward, who was responsible for observing the situation outside the door, listened to the melodious music coming from inside the bar and unconsciously took steps, followed the tactical team, and walked towards the bar. Grant. Coulson, who was coordinating the overall situation outside, immediately picked up his walkie-talkie and shouted loudly. The loud cheers coming from the headphones woke Grant Ward up for a moment. When he found himself standing at the entrance of the bar for some reason, even lifting his legs and preparing to enter the club, he was suddenly covered in a cold sweat from behind. Retreat. At this moment, Coulson's sharp shout came from his headphones again. Grant Ward quickly retreated without hesitation until he was 5 or 6 meters away from the door, and then he stopped. Ha! He couldn't help but take a breath and looked at the club in disbelief. The bright lights and melodious music were supposed to be an extremely attractive and comfortable place, but in the eyes of Grant Ward at this moment, it was an incredibly terrifying cave. During the moment when he was in a daze, Grant Ward immediately realized the strangeness of this bar. He is a professionally trained agent who went against the plan and unconsciously wanted to follow the tactical team into the tavern. At this moment, Coulson quickly arrived at Grant Ward and asked. What happened just now? Why did you follow in? Sound. Grant Ward recalled with an unpleasant expression, Sir, when I heard the music in the tavern just now, my will was disturbed, as if I had been hypnotized, and I unconsciously followed in. If it weren't for your violent drinking that woke me up, I'm afraid. Grant Ward, who had never even taken this task to heart, remembered his previous state. An indescribable fear surged in my heart. What a terrifying hypnosis technique it is to be hypnotized directly upon hearing a sound. Not to mention the danger that hypnotized oneself will encounter when entering this haunted place. In case if one were to be hypnotized and reveal the identity of the Hydra, not only oneself but also one's own family would suffer a tragic fate. At the thought of this, Grant Ward became particularly wary of the inconspicuous bar in front of him. Music. Hypnosis. Upon hearing this, Coulson's eyes lit up. Is the eerie situation at this Morning Star Bar caused by the sound of music inside the bar? Are those people in the bar all hypnotized by music, so they have no response to external information? At this moment, the situation inside the Morning Star Bar suddenly changed. The people lying on the ground in the bar lobby suddenly turned their necks together, some even turning them 180 degrees, in a strange posture, facing the door and staring at Coulson. And then Chi smiled. Staring at a group of people who were unaware of life and death, with white eyes in their pupils, Coulson suddenly felt his entire body erect with sweat and hair. Especially the curved corners of those people's mouths, which were raised in unison, made his back instantly wet with cold sweat. Without hesitation, Coulson began to retreat again. And this time, it was only after retreating 10 meters away that Coulson stopped. Damn it, what the hell is this? Coulson has performed countless tasks and had an abnormal understanding of the human body, which is why he became more aware that a living person cannot turn their neck to this angle. If it's not a living person, What exactly are those guys inside there? A rapid gasp came from Coulson's mouth. Now he needs to adjust his mindset with such breathing. At this moment, Grant Ward, with a heavy face, approached Coulson and said, "Sir, the tactical team has lost contact." Upon hearing this, Coulson immediately turned his head and looked at the entrance of the Morning Star Bar. At this moment, through the crack in the door of the Morning Star Bar, one could just see that the tactical team they brought had become a member of the lobby of the bar, and they all turned their heads to stare at them with a strange gaze. Now, there's a lot of trouble. Just as Coulson and others were frightened by a scene in the Morning Star Bar. Eileen among the crowd outside the warning line. At this moment, I also received a message from the balance of fate. Ding, a destiny singularity that does not belong to this world has been detected. The taboo object, Moonlight DJ, is stirring the current world destiny line. It is predicted that by collecting this taboo object, a large number of destiny points can be obtained and the ability to unlock destiny will be realized. It is strongly recommended that the host shelter this taboo object. Ding, the destiny scale has captured the forbidden item, Moonlight DJ, from the River of Destiny. The method of containment is as follows. Method 1. Superordinary individuals above the level of demigod can temporarily ignore the characteristics of Moonlight DJ and forcibly contain the taboo object based on their divine nature within their bodies. Method 2. The characteristics of the taboo object Silence Box can be used to counteract the characteristics of Moonlight DJ, thereby accommodating the taboo object. Method 3. Under the moonlight, sing a song along with the taboo object Moonlight DJ, to achieve the achievement of every crack in the moonlight will think of me, and temporarily shelter the taboo object. Of course, the premise is that the song you sing should not be too unpleasant. Method 4, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. First Contact. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. First Contact. What? Listening to the prompts in her mind, a series of question marks popped up on Eileen's forehead. Is this folding method serious? You should have the strength described in Method 1. You need to be forced to hide by a gang like this. As for the taboo item, Silence Box, in Method 2, I haven't even heard of it myself, let alone using it to gather the taboo item, Moonlight DJ. Method 3 seems to be a bit reliable. But looking at the current situation at the Morning Star Bar, Eileen estimated that she had not yet reached the taboo Moonlight DJ, and had to finish playing. Say it again. Now the Morning Star Bar is surrounded by a bunch of police officers, and I don't have a chance to go in either. The guy giving orders is not Coulson from the Divine Shield Bureau. With such a high hairline, I shouldn't have mistaken the person. Can it be said that the incident at the Morning Star Bar caught the attention of the Divine Shield Bureau? In this way, wouldn't I have even less opportunity to accommodate the seal inside the bar? No. Eileen shook his head. If you take a little risk, there is always a chance. Taboos are not something that exists in this world. Those people from the Divine Shield Bureau must be struggling with how to handle this matter now. Think of it here. After taking a deep breath and forcing himself to calm down, Eileen tried to push away the crowd watching the commotion. Squeeze towards the patrol officer who is maintaining order at the edge of the cordon. Looking at Eileen, who was constantly squeezing in and causing chaos among the surrounding crowd. A young patrol officer who appeared to be in his early 20s immediately shouted, at the scene of a serious case, "Don't squeeze, everyone go back to me." "Hey, you're talking about you, didn't you hear me? Don't squeeze, did you hear me? Officer, please help me call Officer Coulson." "It's the officer with a walkie-talkie and a slightly higher hairline," said Eileen, who forcefully squeezed next to the patrol officer. The young patrol officer who was originally planning to scold Eileen frowned slightly when he saw Eileen accurately calling out Coulson's name. "Is this guy an acquaintance of Officer Coulson?" After hesitating for a moment, the young patrol officer said, "I can help you call the officer, but if he doesn't see you, I don't know." Thank you, of course. By the way, could you mention to Coulson that I have intelligence about the trouble in the bar? Speaking, Eileen also pointed to the Morning Star bar. That troublesome intelligence in the bar. If what you're saying is true, I think the chief would be happy to advise you. Of course. After seeing that Eileen didn't look like a lie, the young patrol officer ran towards Coulson at a brisk pace. In no time, he ran to Coulson's side and pointed to Eileen in the crowd, saying something to Coulson. Does he know any intelligence about the trouble in this bar? Upon hearing this, Coulson glanced at the Asian boy in the crowd and said to the patrol officer in front of him, "Bring him over." Grant Ward, next to Coulson, looked at the situation and said skeptically, "Does that little ghost really know the intelligence inside?" Coulson smiled and said, "Meeting once doesn't waste much of our time. It's better than using our lives to fill in information. Maybe he really knows something. Soon." Eileen was taken to Coulson by the young patrol officer. After seeing Eileen, Coulson did not immediately inquire about the situation at the Morning Star bar, but asked, "How do you call it?" "My name is Eileen." "So, Eileen, tell me, how did you know my name?" "I don't remember knowing you." While speaking, Coulson stared at Eileen without blinking, observing Eileen's subtle expression. "That's right, you don't know me now, but you must know me in the future. As you can see, I am a fortune teller, and your name is exactly what I got through divination." A fortune teller. A series of question marks flashed over Coulson's head. Grant Ward next to him had a flurry of hands, revealing an expression that I already knew. Even Coulson's face was a bit helpless. "Okay, my fortune teller child, I don't have the heart to play a divination game with you right now. If you really know what's going on at this eerie bar, you can tell me. If you don't know, you can leave now. You don't want to be prosecuted by the New York Police Department for obstructing official duties, do you?" Eileen was not intimidated by Coulson's implicit threat. He nodded earnestly to Coulson and said, "Of course I know. If I don't have real information, I will cause trouble for myself. However, every successful divination is watching fate and requires a considerable price to pay, so." Speaking, Eileen extended his right hand and rubbed his index finger towards Coulson, making an internationally recognized gesture. At this moment, Grant Ward's face standing on the side was no longer disdainful, but rather slightly blackened. "Okay. These days, scammers have actually tricked their Divine Shield Bureau. It's really an old birthday star hanging himself, thinking his life is too long." Grant Ward clenched his fist and raised an eyebrow at Eileen. "Hey kid, has anyone ever told you that you have a lot of courage?" Before Grant Ward could finish speaking, Eileen immediately said, $100,000, just $100,000, and I can tell you the information I have divined." $100,000, you're not at a loss, at least any federal soldier's pension is more than that. This time, I came with sincerity. $100,000 may not be a big deal for those billionaires, but it is definitely not a small number. At least, most federal families cannot afford to save up like this. In Coulson's view, Eileen's mouth was no different from the lion's big mouth. However, as Eileen said, from a certain perspective, this is indeed very cost-effective, at least any federal soldier's pension is several times higher than this. If what Eileen said is really helpful for their operation, then $100,000 is also necessary. But what needs to be fought for is still to be fought for, and Coulson doesn't want to be seen as a scapegoat. $100,000 is not a small amount, Before Coulson could finish speaking, Eileen interrupted directly, "Fate won't discount, so divination won't bargain. If Officer Coulson finds it too expensive, I'll leave now." Coulson. "Okay, I hope the intelligence you provide is worth this price, otherwise the consequences of offending a law enforcement agency will definitely not be what you want to know." At this moment, Grant Ward on the side lit up his assault rifle and sneered, "Coulson, you're too kind. If his intelligence error causes casualties, he will face imprisonment." End of this chapter.